People have invested in a biotech company? Show of hands. Oh, fantastic. How many people know who Stormy Daniels is? All right. Okay. Well, at least I got a sense of who my audience is. I'm pleased to see that the ratio is better on the biotech front. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Realm story, why I joined, and hopefully take you through why I think it's an exciting time to be an investor in our company. As you politely noted, that I was here about a year ago, and at the time we've been remaking the company. Realm was listed on LSE about 10 years ago. I joined 3 years ago. My background is in drug development, biopharmaceuticals. I've taken a couple of companies public. I was the number 2 employee at a company called Intercept Pharmaceuticals, which is now a billion-dollar company. Also was the early employee at a company called Medscape, which became a multi-billion-dollar company called WebMD now, and have been doing this for the better part of 25 years. I joined Realm because I saw an opportunity to remake something that has an asset today that I want to show you why I believe in the third quarter of this year should be a good reason to be an investor now. This is a very important slide, so I want you to squint. Please read it, every detail. This is what we're building. We're building an immune-mediated disease company. This is the grand vision. But you have to have the grand vision, bringing it back down to a smaller level. Who are the people that make that happen? On this slide, I'm going to try and focus you on one key thing on each slide. On this slide, Christian Peters. Dr. Peters joined us about 2 years ago. He's an immunologist by training, and he recently took a company private. Took it private with about $300 million from private equity money. 18 months later, sold it back for $1.8 billion, $1.2 billion. He tripled the money of these folks. He then had his pick of the litter of opportunities to join. And the chief medical officer in a drug development company is probably one of the most difficult and important hires that you can make. So when Christian saw the data and the team that's been assembled, he was pleased to jump in, and he's now running the trial that I'm going to spend most of the time discussing today. This is our current pipeline. The top line there, the atopic dermatitis, which is a fancy word for eczema, is what I'll discuss in most detail today. This is what people are investing in. This is what today people think is the value driver for the company. I'll briefly touch on some of the others, but this is the leading value proposition. Before I dig into the investment highlights, for those of you who have been an investor in biotech, you understand it is not about profits. It's not about revenues. And that's the question that I was asked here last year, which is, when are you going to be profitable? When are you going to have revenues? I lose about half the audience when I say profits and revenues are many years off. This is a drug development story. And it's a story about comparables. It's a story about other companies in this space and what their values are and whether people perceive there to be a realistic potential for M&A activity. And I'll talk a little bit about 3 companies that went public very recently that happen to be on the other side of the Atlantic, but 3 companies that are similar to ours. One is called Sienna, one is called Menlo, and one is called Solgi. All 3 are dermatology companies without any revenues, not profits obviously, and one of them is worth $200 million, one is worth $400 million, and one is worth $800 million. So there is a disequilibrium in terms of what people or specialist healthcare investors pay for in the U.S. who bet on these companies, and they bet that they're ultimately either going to become big disease immune-mediated companies or they're going to be taken out. So our investment highlight, or the reason that we were able to attract some of the smarter healthcare specialist funds, and I'll talk about those towards the end of it, was because of our phase 2 atopic dermatitis trial, which is coming out in phase 3. I won't get into some of the specifics unless you want to corner me afterwards. I'm happy to tell you what an IL-4 alpha-2 inhibitor is, why we think that's important. But suffice to say, there will be a value inflection in Q3 of this year. 30 seconds on the technology itself. It's fairly straightforward. We sell a high concentration, stabilized of hypochlorous acid. It took me a few months to be able to say the words hypochlorous acid. We say it 3 times. Hypochlorous acid. It's what your body makes to fight infection. Essentially, it has been around since we have been around. People know it as an antimicrobial. What people didn't know is that at high concentrations, it also has anti-inflammatory effects. So while you can get wound care, you can kill germs with a lower concentration. At the higher concentrations where we have been able to stabilize hypochlorous acid, we found it to have great anti-inflammatory activity. The reason that's important is because we've been able to patent that. So we have granted patents that take us through 2032, which is a long time, even in drug development. We have composition of matter, that's around the formulation. We have it on the method of use, and also around the way that we manufacture the product. So diving right into PRO22, the name of our product for atopic dermatitis. Little background on the field. Atopic dermatitis has been a relatively sleepy area. The red slice here that you're looking at is what analysts project the growth of atopic dermatitis 2. You'll notice that on the left side of your screen, there was no red slice. It's because the market is relatively generic. So up until last year, there had been nothing new in atopic dermatitis. And then all of a sudden, I say all of a sudden, over the past 5 years, there have been companies like ours developing products for atopic dermatitis, so much so now that analysts project it's going to literally double the size of the market from $12 billion to $24 billion. These are some of the headline deals that have happened in the past 18 months. Pfizer bought a company that many of you probably had not heard of called Anacor. Anacor had a product for eczema in phase 3. It wasn't even approved, and they bought the company for $5.2 billion. Pfizer believes this drug will be a $2 billion drug. They launched it last year. Last year, its first year, it had $150 million in sales, which is good for a first-year drug. And yet dermatologists, if you poll them, will say the drug, which is called Eucrisa, they'll say Eucrisa seems to have moderate efficacy. It stings and burns a little bit when you put it on, but it's the first new drug we've had in a long time. We'd love something else to come along. If you look at the label of Eucrisa, how good is it? You know that all these trials have to be placebo-controlled. The placebo arm did pretty well. And Eucrisa did about 10% above what placebo did. So not that great. And this is what doctors are seeing now. So they're still interested in another product, and yet Pfizer believes that the Anacor product is going to be a $2 billion drug. Secondarily, Novartis. Novartis bought a small private company that had an oral pill in phase 2, which is the middle phase, which is where we're in. And they bought this pill, which has a potential to help the itch associated with eczema. A lot of times when people get eczema, they also itch. So this pill, or this company that had this pill, was bought for $1 billion worth of what's called biobucks. I mean, that's the top line. But it had a $400 million price tag for an initial upfront. So still significant amount of money paid for a product in phase 2. A few other deals there that I want to point out would be Allergan's purchase of Vitae. Vitae is about 2 miles up the road from us. Another product in phase 2. They had a cream for eczema in phase 2, and Allergan came in and paid $639 million for the product. So there's a lot of interest. That product subsequently has failed, so Allergan is looking for other products. The point is, there's a lot of opportunity in this space, hence that red triangle you saw on the previous chart growing. The reason to be this space. This is just a quick slide about atopic dermatitis. It is eczema. It's more than just sort of a dry, itchy skin. For people who have it, particularly younger children, it can be very debilitating. And we think there's a nice opportunity to bring a product to patients, and the fact that big drug companies are buying products like this is obviously attractive investment opportunity. I'll show you a little bit of data, some data on preclinical and some data in man. On the preclinical front, this is the standard model that's used. What I mean by that is you take a house dust mite, you put it in the paste, you irritate the skin of the mouse, and while you're doing that, you see if you can prevent lesions from forming. Unfortunately, the bottom line shows that we were able to prevent lesions from forming, and the top line shows that the lesions continue to form if you don't use our product. Prevention is a difficult market. What you want to show is treatment. Right? Once something has started to get bad, how can you improve upon it? And this shows the treatment. So the top blue line, again, is the same model. You irritate the skin of the animal. You then watch as the animal gets worse. That's the blue line on the top. And then the two bottom lines, this time we compared it to a steroid, which is the standard treatment. And most children, pediatricians and parents don't want their children on steroids long term. We showed that by the end of treatment, we had comparable efficacy to Betamax. We repeated this again with another product called tofacitinib, which is a big product in the pipelines, and had comparable efficacy. We then look at the cells. Why do we think this is happening? Without getting too scientific, we reduce certain cytokines in the blood that are also associated with inflammation. This is really fortunate that we reduce IL-4 and IL-13 because Sanofi, big pharmaceutical company, is out pounding the pavement, putting ads in journals and articles about IL-4 and IL-13. And they have just launched a product, which is an injectable product for eczema. So think about it, an injectable, and the price tag is $37,000. So Sanofi has just launched a $37,000 injectable because it's an injectable IL-4, IL-13. Guess what? We're a topical IL-4, IL-13 inhibitor. So in summary, the preclinical data shows we have a preventive effect, we have a treatment effect, we have the same mechanism of action as the big gorilla in this, Sanofi with their injectable. And we're obviously going to be priced more competitively than that. So there's good reason to believe at the preclinical level. Preclinical level doesn't always translate into the clinic. we're fortunate in that we do have a predecessor product. We have a product with hypochlorous acid, albeit a slightly lower concentration, that has been approved by the FDA, and we were able to run it in a trial. So we had an investigator, a physician, who's on the board of the American Academy of Dermatology, and he ran a trial in 30 patients looking at itch. Not necessarily just the treatment, but just the itch. And in itch alone,